Jacob's story is an epic journey filled with faith, deception, struggle, and eventual redemption. It begins with a couple in anguish, Isaac and his wife Rebekah. For 20 years, Rebekah was barren, a condition seen in ancient times not only as a personal grief, but also as a sign of divine disfavor. Yet Isaac did not give up. He prayed persistently to the Lord, and his prayer was answered. Rebekah became pregnant, but her pregnancy was not easy. The babies struggled within her, and she sought God for understanding. His answer was prophetic and mysterious. Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. This was a foretelling of the rivalry between her sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau was born first, red and hairy, a robust child. Jacob followed immediately, gripping Esau's heel, a detail that would foreshadow a life of competition and conflict. Their names reflected their identities. Esau meant hairy, while Jacob meant heel grabber or supplanter. As the boys grew, their personalities diverged greatly. Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. Jacob, on the other hand, was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Isaac favored Esau because of his taste for wild game, while Rebekah loved Jacob more. The tension between the brothers reached a turning point over something as ordinary as a meal. One day, Esau came back from the field famished, and Jacob was cooking stew. When Esau asked for some, Jacob replied with a cunning bargain, "Sell me your birthright." Esau, overwhelmed by hunger, agreed. He swore an oath and exchanged his inheritance rights for a bowl of lentil stew. It was a moment of profound impulsiveness for Esau and quiet calculation for Jacob. The birthright, representing leadership, family authority, and a double portion of inheritance, was now Jacob's. Years later, when Isaac was old and his eyesight failing, he called for Esau and asked him to prepare his favorite food so that he might bless him before dying. Rebekah, who overheard the conversation, devised a plan for Jacob to receive the blessing instead. She prepared the food and dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes, even placing goat skins on his hands and neck to mimic Esau's hairy body. Though hesitant, Jacob went along with the deception. He entered his father's room, pretending to be Esau. Isaac, though suspicious at first, was ultimately convinced. He touched Jacob's disguised arms and smelled his clothes. Then he gave the blessing, one of authority, prosperity, and dominion. "May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness," Isaac said. "May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers." With these words, the spiritual and material birthright was conferred upon Jacob. Moments after Jacob left, Esau returned. When Isaac realized what had happened, he trembled violently. Esau pleaded for another blessing, but the deed was done. Isaac had given everything to Jacob. What he could offer Esau now was meager in comparison, a life of service, struggle, and distance from abundance. Esau's grief turned into rage. He vowed to kill Jacob once their father died. Rebekah, fearing for Jacob's life, urged him to flee to her brother Laban in Haran. She used a pretense that Jacob must find a wife among their own people to convince Isaac to send him away. Isaac, unaware of the deception, agreed and reaffirmed the blessing to Jacob, asking that God Almighty bless him, make him fruitful, and give him the blessing of Abraham. So Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. On the journey, he stopped for the night at a certain place and used a stone for a pillow. That night, he had a dream that would change his life. He saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven and angels ascending and descending on it. Above it stood the Lord, who spoke, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go." When Jacob awoke, he was filled with awe. He said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He took the stone he had used for a pillow, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on it. He named the place Bethel, meaning house of God. Then he made a vow. If God would be with him, provide for him, and bring him back safely to his father's house, then the Lord would be his God. This early chapter in Jacob's life reveals a man driven by desire, shaped by tension, and chosen by God despite his flaws. Jacob, though deceptive, carried the promise forward. God was not merely responding to moral behavior, but working through imperfect vessels to accomplish divine purposes. The story at its core is not just about sibling rivalry or family drama. It is about destiny, covenant, and the way God chooses to weave his plan through human weakness. Jacob's journey had just begun. The next chapters would continue to test his character, challenge his integrity, and shape him into the man who would one day become Israel. Jacob's journey continued as he made his way to Haran, the home of his uncle Laban. After his vision at Bethel and the vow he made to God, Jacob pressed forward, uncertain of what awaited him, but now moving under the weight of divine promise. When he arrived near Haran, he came to a well in a field where shepherds were gathered with their flocks. Among them, he encountered Rachel, the daughter of Laban. She was coming to water her sheep, and when Jacob saw her, he was immediately drawn to her. He helped roll the stone away from the mouth of the well, watered her flock, and revealed his identity. Rachel ran to tell her father. Laban welcomed Jacob warmly, embracing him as family. For a month, Jacob stayed and worked for Laban. When Laban offered to pay him, Jacob made his intentions clear. He wished to marry Rachel. In return, he would work for 7 years. Those years seemed to Jacob like a few days, so great was his love for her. But on the wedding night, Laban betrayed him. He gave Jacob his older daughter, Leah, instead. In the darkness of the tent, Jacob did not realize the switch until morning. Furious, Jacob confronted Laban, who justified the act by pointing to local custom. The older must marry before the younger. If Jacob still wanted Rachel, he would need to work another 7 years. Jacob agreed. After a week-long bridal celebration with Leah, Laban gave Rachel to Jacob as well. Thus, Jacob found himself with 2 wives, bound by custom, labor, and love. But this marital arrangement bred rivalry. Leah, unloved, was granted children by God to ease her pain. She bore 4 sons in succession: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Rachel remained barren, consumed by jealousy. She exclaimed to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Jacob, frustrated, reminded her that he was not God. In desperation, Rachel gave her maidservant Bilhah to Jacob. Through Bilhah, Rachel claimed 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Leah responded by giving her maidservant Zilpah, who bore Gad and Asher. Then Leah herself bore 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Finally, God remembered Rachel. He opened her womb, and she gave birth to Joseph, the son who would one day rise to power in Egypt. As Jacob's family grew, so did his wealth and tension with Laban. Jacob requested to leave and return to his homeland. Laban, seeing that God had blessed him through Jacob's presence, tried to persuade him to stay. They agreed on new terms. Jacob would keep any sheep or goats that were speckled, spotted, or dark-colored. Laban, however, immediately removed all such animals from his flocks, giving them to his sons and putting a 3-day journey between them and Jacob. But Jacob, through keen observation and selective breeding, ensured that his flocks prospered. Over time, Jacob became exceedingly wealthy, possessing large herds, servants, camels, and donkeys. Laban's sons began to resent Jacob's success. Even Laban's attitude toward Jacob shifted. Then the Lord spoke to Jacob, telling him to return to his homeland. Jacob called Rachel and Leah to the field and shared what had been happening, the change in Laban's attitude, the dreams he had, and God's command. Rachel and Leah agreed, saying their father had treated them like strangers, sold them, and used up their inheritance. Together, they gathered their belongings, livestock, and household, and Jacob set out secretly for Canaan. Unknown to Jacob, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Laban pursued them, catching up after 7 days. He confronted Jacob, accusing him of theft. Jacob, unaware of Rachel's actions, declared that anyone found with the idols would not live. Rachel, hiding the idols in her camel's saddle, sat on them and told her father she could not rise because of her condition. Laban searched but found nothing. Jacob, now exasperated, vented his frustration to Laban. He reminded him of his 20 years of service, 14 for his daughters, 6 for his flocks, and how he had endured the scorching heat and cold, sleepless nights, and constant injustice. "If the God of my father had not been with me," Jacob said, "you would have sent me away empty-handed." Laban, recognizing Jacob's resolve, proposed a covenant. They made a heap of stones as a witness and set a boundary they would not cross to harm each other. They ate together, and the next morning, Laban kissed his daughters and grandchildren goodbye and returned home. Now Jacob was free, but he faced a new fear, returning to the land of Esau. He sent messengers ahead with gifts and messages of peace. When the messengers returned, they brought troubling news. Esau was coming to meet Jacob with 400 men. Terrified, Jacob divided his people and flocks into two groups, reasoning that if one was attacked, the other might escape. Then Jacob prayed, reminding God of his promises and confessing his unworthiness. He prepared lavish gifts for Esau, goats, sheep, camels, cattle, and donkeys, and sent them ahead in waves, hoping to pacify his brother's anger. That night, Jacob remained behind alone, and something extraordinary happened. A man came and wrestled with him until daybreak. It was a struggle unlike any other, a divine encounter cloaked in mystery. When the man saw that he could not overpower Jacob, he touched his hip socket, dislocating it. Still, Jacob refused to let go. "I will not let you go unless you bless me," he declared. The man asked his name, and upon hearing Jacob, he responded, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob asked for the man's name, but was only told, "Why do you ask?" Then he was blessed there. Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." As the sun rose, Jacob limped away, his body forever marked by the encounter. This was not merely a physical struggle, but a symbolic one, a confrontation with himself, his past, and the divine. Jacob had strived his whole life to gain the birthright, the blessing, his wives, his fortune. Now at this turning point, he had contended directly with God and was changed. After the mysterious and life-altering encounter at Peniel, Jacob continued his journey toward his homeland, forever marked both physically by the limp in his step and spiritually by his new name, Israel. As he approached the land of Edom, the tension within him grew. He lifted his eyes and saw Esau coming with 400 men. This was the brother he had deceived so long ago, the brother who had once sworn to kill him. Jacob quickly divided his family, placing the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel with Joseph at the rear. Then he went ahead of them all, bowing to the ground 7 times as he approached Esau, each bow a gesture of humility and submission. But instead of vengeance, Esau ran to meet him. He embraced Jacob, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him. They wept together, brothers reconciled after years of separation and silent wounds. Esau asked about the caravan and the animals Jacob had sent ahead. Jacob explained they were a gift to find favor in Esau's eyes, but Esau insisted he had enough. Jacob, still wary yet sincere, urged him to accept them as a token of grace. Reluctantly, Esau accepted. Though Esau offered to accompany him or assign some of his men for protection, Jacob declined. He explained that his children were young and the flocks were delicate. If they were driven too hard, they would die. Jacob asked Esau to go ahead, promising to follow slowly. But instead of heading directly to Seir, where Esau lived, Jacob went to Succoth. There he built shelters for his livestock and himself, settling briefly before moving on. Eventually, Jacob arrived safely in Shechem in the land of Canaan. He purchased a plot of land from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, and pitched his tent. He also set up an altar and named it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel, a declaration of his identity and allegiance to the God who had guided him. But peace was short-lived. His daughter Dinah, born to Leah, went out to visit the women of the land. Shum, the son of Hamor and prince of the region, saw her, took her, and violated her. Yet he loved her and wanted to marry her. He asked his father to arrange the union. When Jacob heard, he remained silent until his sons returned from the fields. They were furious. Hamor came to negotiate, proposing intermarriage between their peoples. Shechem, desperate, offered to pay any bride price. But Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, deceived them. They said they would agree to the union only if all the males in the city were circumcised. Hamor and Shechem agreed, and the men complied. But on the 3rd day, while the men were still in pain, Simeon and Levi attacked the city. They killed every male, including Hamor and Shechem, and rescued Dinah. They took everything, livestock, possessions, women, and children. Jacob was horrified. He feared retaliation from the surrounding Canaanite tribes and accused his sons of bringing danger upon the entire household. But they retorted, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" Still, Jacob's unease deepened. God then instructed him to move to Bethel and settle there, returning to the place where he had seen the heavenly vision long ago. Jacob obeyed. He told his household to rid themselves of foreign gods, purify themselves, and change their clothes. They gave Jacob all the foreign gods and earrings, and he buried them under an oak at Shechem. As they traveled, the fear of God fell upon the surrounding cities, and no one pursued them. At Bethel, Jacob built an altar, and God appeared to him again. God reaffirmed the name change to Israel and repeated the promises given to Abraham and Isaac, descendants, land, and blessing. Then Jacob set up a pillar and poured out a drink offering, dedicating the place. Soon after, tragedy struck. While they were on the way from Bethel, Rachel went into labor near Ephrath. The labor was difficult, and as she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. But Jacob renamed him Benjamin, son of the right hand. Rachel died and was buried there. Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb, a monument to his beloved wife. Jacob moved on, and during that time, his firstborn son Reuben committed a grievous sin. He slept with Bilhah, his father's concubine. Though the text is brief, it marked a significant fracture in the family, and Jacob would later remember this moment with pain. Eventually, Jacob returned to his father Isaac in Mamre near Hebron. Isaac, now aged, died at the age of 180. He was buried by his two sons, Esau and Jacob, together again to honor their father. As Jacob settled in the land of Canaan, where his father had once resided, his family grew not only in number, but also in complexity. Though he had 12 sons, favoritism marked his household, especially regarding Joseph, the firstborn of Rachel, Jacob's most beloved wife. Jacob made Joseph a richly ornamented robe, a symbol of status that bred deep resentment among his brothers. Joseph too had dreams, visions of sheaves and stars bowing before him, and his naive retelling of these dreams only intensified their jealousy. The tension within the family, simmering for years, was about to erupt. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were grazing the flocks near Shechem. When they saw him approaching, their bitterness overcame them. They conspired to kill him, but Reuben intervened, suggesting instead that they throw Joseph into a dry cistern, intending to rescue him later. While Reuben was away, the brothers sold Joseph to a caravan of Ishmaelites on their way to Egypt. They dipped his robe in goat's blood and presented it to Jacob, leading him to believe that a wild animal had devoured his beloved son. The loss shattered Jacob. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for many days, refusing to be comforted. "I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave," he said. While Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt, Jacob's household carried on in grief and secrecy. Years passed. A severe famine eventually swept through the region, and Jacob learned that grain could be found in Egypt. He sent 10 of his sons to buy food, keeping Benjamin behind out of fear of losing him. In Egypt, the brothers unknowingly came face to face with Joseph, now a powerful official under Pharaoh. Joseph recognized them, but they did not recognize him. What followed was a series of tests, accusations of espionage, imprisonment of Simeon, and demands that they bring Benjamin to Egypt. Jacob was devastated at the idea. "You have deprived me of my children," he cried. "Joseph is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin too?" Only when the famine worsened did he relent. Judah, once the brother who had pushed for Joseph's sale, offered himself as a pledge for Benjamin's safety. When the brothers returned to Egypt with Benjamin, Joseph could no longer contain his emotions. After one final test involving a planted silver cup, he revealed his identity. In a moment of deep emotion, Joseph wept loudly and embraced his brothers. He forgave them, attributing the events not to their betrayal, but to God's providence. "It was not you who sent me here, but God," Joseph said. "He made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all Egypt." Back in Canaan, Jacob was stunned when he learned that Joseph was alive. "I'm convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die," he said. God spoke to Jacob in a vision, reassuring him not to fear going to Egypt, promising to make him a great nation there and to bring him back again. With his sons, grandsons, and all his household, Jacob journeyed to Egypt. The reunion between Jacob and Joseph was one of the most moving in the biblical narrative. When they met, Joseph threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. "Now I am ready to die," Jacob said, "since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Joseph arranged for his family to settle in Goshen, a fertile region suited for shepherds. Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and despite his advanced age, spoke with clarity and grace. As the famine continued, Joseph managed Egypt's resources wisely, ensuring that both Egyptians and Jacob's family survived the crisis. As Jacob neared the end of his life, he reflected deeply on all he had experienced. The promises made to Abraham and Isaac, the ladder at Bethel, the wrestling at Peniel, the loss and return of Joseph. He called for Joseph and made him swear to bury him, not in Egypt, but in the land of his ancestors. Then he gathered his sons to bless them, each receiving words that reflected their character and destiny. To Reuben, Jacob spoke with grief and disappointment, recalling his defilement of Bilhah's bed. Simeon and Levi were rebuked for their violence in Shechem. Judah, however, received a profound blessing. The scepter will not depart from Judah until he to whom it belongs shall come. This prophecy hinted at a future king, even a Messiah. To the others, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Joseph, and Benjamin, Jacob offered words that were poetic, prophetic, and personal. He gave Joseph a double portion of inheritance through his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, whom he blessed as his own. Having spoken his last words, Jacob drew his feet up into his bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph and his brothers took Jacob's body to Canaan, fulfilling his request to be buried in the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah rested. After Jacob's death, the brothers feared Joseph would now take revenge. They sent him a message claiming that Jacob had requested Joseph to forgive them, but Joseph wept when he received it. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Jacob's life story, spanning deceit and vision, exile and homecoming, loss and restoration, stands as a powerful testament to human frailty and divine faithfulness. Through him, the 12 tribes of Israel were born, and the covenant continued. Though imperfect, Jacob was chosen. Though broken, he was blessed. His journey, marked by struggle, encounter, and transformation, left a legacy that would shape the destiny of nations.